Welcome back for another episode of the CyberVault. I'm very excited today to be joined by Lawrence Genitello. Lawrence is founder and CEO of Optery, a company helping individuals and enterprises protect their digital footprint by removing personal information from hundreds of data broker sites. Lawrence has spent years at the intersection of privacy and security, and he's on a mission to make data protection accessible and actionable. And in this episode, we're going to dig into the hidden risks of the data broker ecosystem, why personal data exposure is a massive security blind spot, and how organizations and individuals alike can take back control of their digital identities. But before we unpack all of that, Lawrence, it is such a pleasure to have you here with me today. Why don't you maybe introduce us and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here, Katie. Great to see you again. And I'm really excited about the time that we're going to spend here together. So I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I started working in the consumer data space close to 15 years ago. And I spent some time in the data for marketing space. And over the period of time that I spent in that area, close to 10 years, I saw data being used much more innocently for typically for digital marketing kind of personalization campaigns. And then over that time, we had companies that were starting to get more and more clever, more and more innovative with what they were doing, and really starting to take advantage of people. And then even more so, attackers and adversaries that were using data-driven marketing tactics to supercharge social engineering campaigns and hacking attacks and that kind of thing. And during that time, I had spent so much time in data that I felt like there needed to be a piece of software that automatically delivered opt-out and data deletion requests at scale to help protect people. And so luckily at around that time, you had new privacy laws like the GDPR or the CCPA here in California where I live that were being enacted and being put forth for consumers, for individuals. But I felt like there was something really missing in terms of just the software and technology that would put those rights and those laws into action. And so that kind of began the journey of starting Optery about 5 years ago. And today we have a decent business. We have hundreds of thousands of people using the product. We have growing quite a bit. Our whole industry is growing quite a bit. Our company has tripled revenue the last 2 years in a row. We are on track to double revenue again this year. And so we've been helping more and more businesses to protect the people in their organizations. We partner with CISOs and their departments, their organizations to help reduce the risks of social engineering and attacks. So that's a little bit about me. I started off in the data space, felt like there was a big need for data removal software. And today we help hundreds of thousands of people to reduce the risks for attacks, and that's cyber attacks and physical attacks. So one of the big reasons people use us is not only to protect themselves in the cyber realm, but also in the physical realm, removing home addresses from the internet. To if you have somebody who is interested in confronting you physically, it's a good thing to get your home address and get it off the internet and not make it super easy to find you. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about the background, kind of a little bit about where we are.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the overview. And I think, I mentioned it at the very beginning there, but you guys are really targeting, in my opinion, what is a really big blind spot, and more often than not just for enterprises, but for individuals, because what you've just mentioned is that's kind of relevant to everyday people. And I think, for anybody that's unfamiliar, when we talk about kind of like data broker and stuff like that, obviously this is kind of where people have got so much information out there. I mean, could you maybe break down what we mean by that and why not only security professionals and leaders and CISOs, but also everyday consumers should really care about this?
Yeah, so kind of where we live and where we sit within the cybersecurity industry is kind of in the realm of OSINT. And you often would have OSINT researchers that would use data brokers to assemble information on people. And in many cases, it's as simple as a Google search, and you're able to locate different data brokers that have the target of your research, and you're able to develop detailed dossiers on people. And so what's happened is that attackers have started to use those same tools, those same tactics and those same technologies for attacks. And so it's really vast. The data broker space is really vast. So we've been at this. We launched Optery in 2021. So we've been at this for about 4 years. And there's other companies in this space that have been around maybe similar or even longer. And it's a really tough battle. And part of it is if you look at the data removal companies, maybe there's like 10 of us total. There's thousands of data brokers. And if you look at the size of our kind of revenue base and the data broker revenue base, and the data broker revenue base is in the couple $100 billion. And so we're really kind of outgunned in terms of what's out there. And so one of the things that we've done at Optery is kind of segmented out this constellation of data brokers. I mean, there's some data brokers that are dealing with location data, that are dealing with car data, like what happens when you're driving your car around, that data gets sold, health data, et cetera, et cetera. And we kind of segmented out the space into different categories. And the first category that we started with were the people search sites. And the people search sites are typically like no further a search engine away from finding information about people. We kind of started there, and there's prospecting databases typically used for cold outbound campaigns, but increasingly also used by cyber attackers for their campaigns. A lot of these prospecting databases are used very heavily by hacking groups, and so we kind of have segmented them out because you can't cover 2,000 data brokers at once. It kind of takes a little bit of time to get there. So there's a lot of different data sets out there. It's everything from stuff that might be a little more innocuous and harmless around like, is this person into fashion? Are they into sports? We send them some ads that about products in that category. To other things like, what's this person's spouse's name or parent's name or kids' names, and how could we go after this person through an adjacent means? So there's really just quite a lot of data out there. It's a really tough problem, and what's really happened is that CISOs and kind of the office of the CISO is viewing removal of kind of exposed personal data is a proactive, preventative measure against social engineering and attacks. So it's no longer just kind of like penetration testing what's happening within our walls. It's what's happening outside of our walls. That's how is it that attackers are formulating their attacks outside of our walls, and let's reduce the amount of data that they have in their hands, because data is more and more is just being used more and more against people. So that's a little bit along the lines of what you're talking about.
No, and I think you touched base on something, the fact that you've obviously kind of been able to categorize them. And I think for so many people out there, they can't really comprehend, or they don't really think about how much of their data is like actually out there. I mean, what are some of the most surprising places you would say? Because you just referenced there, for example, when you're driving your car around, obviously then you've got data going out there. I mean, what are some of the places that are probably most surprising for people to find out where they're kind of getting data from, and kind of where it ends up?
Yeah, I think one is, I mean, it depends on what kind of kind of connected TV that you use, but there's lawsuits in the past of certain TV companies that were just selling your data. It kind of, there's so many different things out there, so many different types of devices and different systems and services that you can use. Clearly, if you use like YouTube TV, like Google knows quite a lot about you, and I don't think Google's selling what you're watching externally, but their advertiser base is able to target ads based on other things beyond just what you watch. But there's a lot of other different connected TV types of systems, and I think sometimes that really surprises people when they understand, oh wow, like somebody knows what I'm watching, and based on what device I'm using or what service I'm using, that actually might just be sold kind of just on the open market. And even within the space, you kind of have like closed systems for data and like transacting of data, and that's typically like the walled gardens. So Facebook at one point was very open, and that's kind of what led to things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And after that, they really tightened things up and have really closed things down pretty significantly. Google's also kind of a closed ecosystem, but there's other companies out there that are not closed, and it's sort of just a free for all. Like anyone and everybody can have access to the information, and it's just sort of like if you've got a credit card, you can fog a mirror. They'll sell you whatever data that they have. So I think what's surprising, one, cars, oftentimes people don't understand that, when they maybe set up, our cars today have computers in them, and you have, connected to your phone, and maps and music and apps and stuff. And we usually, if you're buying a car or using a car, you kind of just clicking through something and you accept it. And then next thing you know, your driving data is being sold and to insurance companies that are, deciding how much they're going to charge you for your renewal or for your, so that cars tends to be, I think, a surprise, and then TV tends to be a surprise. I think most people at this time are aware this stuff is happening in their phone, but I don't think they're aware just quite how dramatically it's happening. Location data, kind of tracking around which stores you visit, what venues you're in, and then even people kind of just let their guard down and don't really realize how much of a tell web browsing behavior is. And so, VPN software has really taken off. It's always been popular, but it's gotten really popular, just to be able to protect your browsing behavior from your ISP. And then you sort of have to trust the VPN company. But I think people just sort of just lull, and they feel like, oh, okay, my computer is this household thing. It's just part of my life. And they don't realize, if they could go back and look at your history for the last week, you're like, oh, wow, like there's like quite a lot there that's indicative of, if I was searching for something around maybe like, some health ailment, or, maybe like searching for a new job or something like that. There's all these tells, and you just kind of forget about it. You just don't really realize that all that is being logged, analyzed, stored, and in some cases sold. And that's where Optery comes in. Is we're really squarely focused on the data broker space, and say, hey, we don't cover Facebook, we don't cover LinkedIn, we don't cover Google. We cover these companies that you never heard of before. You're like, wait, how the hell is this company selling my driving data? This is wrong. And so that's what we focus on. And our customers, they say, look, like I can't keep track of the 1,000 companies, and 10 new ones just launched last week or last month. So we want to outsource that work to a company that has just, professionals that are focused on the problem day in, day out. This is our domain. This is our area. We have teams of researchers that are investigating new data brokers coming online, testing them, and also assessing like what the impact is, and just delivering data removal and deletion requests just by the millions.
Yeah. And I feel like you mentioned a couple of things there, and it's so easy to forget when you're looking at something like you're walking around with your phone, and it's you're getting up or you're going following your usual routine, and suddenly it's like, oh, are you on your way to work, or whatever it might be. Like you think, oh, it's so clever, but you don't realize that actually all of that data. I mean, obviously our phones are kind of secure to an exception, but you don't realize that data can be traced, or kind of how you're using it or who it's being used by. A lot of the time you just kind of don't think about that, especially if you're not in kind of the working world of security, and you're not kind of surrounded by that all the time. It probably never crosses your mind. And I think so many people assume that they're protected by the privacy regulations. If you look at like GDPR or CCPA, like we mentioned, the assumption is, oh well, my data, legally is protected here. Like I'm absolutely fine. But that's not really the reality. I mean, kind of, how much does that actually kind of look after them?
Yeah, it definitely helps. So, in a world with GDPR versus a world without GDPR, I'd rather be in a world with GDPR. I feel glad that I live in California, because we have the strictest privacy laws in the US. And in the US, California and Texas in particular are really taking the lead on enforcement. So, there was a while, I mean, the CCPA, I think, went into place in 2020, and there's really almost no enforcement. But just this year, they're really kind of like beefing up resources and technology, and they're really starting to beef up enforcement. This is one of the trends within privacy right now, is the trend of enforcement. So I think definitely it's helpful to have the laws, but I think we're still a long way out from getting more like stronger compliance. One of the big challenges in the U.S. is just that it's a state by state thing. There's no federal law, and it's state by state. And I think there's around 15 or so states that have active like privacy laws, like right now. A number of others, maybe 5 to 10, that have already been passed, but they're not going to be active until maybe like January 1st. So definitely the trend is in the right direction, and it helps, but it's not it's not a silver bullet. So just with the laws give rights, and that's kind of like one of the big problems. That's one of the things that made our company possible is the laws give rights, but by and large they don't give tools. And so you say, okay, I've got all these rights, but I'm not doing anything about it because I don't have time to go manually one by one and submit opt-out requests to 1,000 data brokers and then keep track of which ones are kind of hiding in the shadows. So the laws are great. I'm really excited that more and more are kind of moving through the United States. Encouraged that there's been more enforcement. I think there's a long ways to go, and it's a that's kind of I think where we're at in that area.
And I think naturally that's kind of why businesses like Optery kind of step in, right? Because like there's that, like you say, the tools need to be there for people to have that access. Because I mean, even if you just look at online shopping, for example, how many times is it easy? You spot something while you're scrolling on social media, you go, "Oh, that looks really cool. Let me buy it." It's a random shop you've never bought from before. We'll probably never buy from them again, but they've now got your email address, your home address, your card details, like all those extra things, and it just probably never crosses your mind. You're never going to sit there and go through that spam folder on your inbox and opt out of every one of them because it's it's pretty time consuming. I mean, would you say kind of is there like a privacy myth or like a misconception that you would kind of like be like I want to debunk this. This is something that people have this perception around something or kind of that everybody kind of falls for this, but it's just not really the case.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one is that it's important to understand that we all have different, we all have our own threat models and kind of risk tolerances. So, there could be someone that says, look, like, I don't care. Yeah, so my data is being tracked. Like my home address is on the web. My email is getting sent around. Like it's out there. I can't do anything about it. I don't care. And I think that's, I think that's everybody's entitled to their own opinion. You have other people that are the polar opposite, the tinfoil hat crowd that, are completely disconnected, won't use a smartphone, still using a phone from the 1990s, and take a tremendous amount of effort. They have maybe a separate PO box. Nothing, no mail gets sent to their homes. Anytime they purchase something online, it's to like an Amazon locker or to some kind of a delivery location, and maybe refuse to use any like social media, refuse to LinkedIn, etc. So everybody has kind of their own model. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. Some people are more concerned about certain things than other things. Some people are more concerned about home address. Some people are more concerned about their email. Some people are more concerned about, hey, I just don't want to get my financial accounts hacked. Like that's my issue. Like I cannot live with getting financial account hacked, somebody cleaning out my bank account or ruining my credit. And so I think it's kind of hard to have like a one size fits all here. I think it really depends on what your own kind of risk tolerance is, like what's most important to you. One of the myths I think probably maybe a little bit maybe like selfishly is I started Optery in we launched the product in 2021, and we as a company when we started it we kind of had some conversations about what we wanted it to be as a company, like what was like our kind of like our DNA. And to start with, we based our DNA as going to be product and engineering. So my two co-founders are very incredibly brilliant engineers, and I kind of come from a product and tech background. And so I think we kind of like thought that was going to kind of take us all the way. But I did not realize how impactful a lot of the marketing that you kind of wrap around the products. And so one of the misconceptions probably that you mentioned is that the products like data removal products or products in general are interchangeable. So I talk to some people say, oh, I use this or I use that. And we've kind of done the analysis, we've done the research, we've seen the research, and the effectiveness of the products in our space, at least, I know in a lot of spaces, is dramatically different. So there's some products in our space where they almost do nothing. They literally almost do nothing. You might as well just be, kind of throwing money away. And some of the products are very, very good. And a lot of people make buying decisions based on, social media and influencers and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I think just a misconception is that the products are interchangeable. And I really recommend people kind of do the research, do the homework, and not just do the research and like see what um, maybe like you can find online, but actually try out products. And so one of the things we always say, in our space is try out the different products and see, what what they feel like and how they work. But I think it's a misconception in general that products are interchangeable. I think it's really valuable to kind of try things out. So maybe that's an answer for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's really worth highlighting as well because I think in cyber in general, there's like this continuous kind of flow of we're the product that can change the world or can change your life or could X, Y, and Z. But there's so many that don't always kind of live up to the name, but just because the branding could be there, it's easy to fall into the assumption that it does. And I think then it's even more relevant to everyday individuals as well that aren't always exposed to kind of how I suppose kind of the variation of different kind of products out there. I'd be really interested actually, Lawrence, to get your thoughts because we are continuously seeing an evolution in this space. You already referenced the fact that there's more kind of, especially if we're looking at North America, more states that are really taking kind of security regulations and privacy more seriously. And I think we're really going to start to see an evolution over the next couple of years of practices that are coming into place and maybe more awareness. I mean, what are your predictions here? How do you see this kind of evolving over the next few years?
Well, maybe a little. In what sense? In terms of just where things will be in a few years with data removal, or with maybe get a little more on that one.
Yeah, probably more like if we're looking at, how right now this is definitely something where people are like, oh, okay, for example, listening to this episode, we can see the value in the data removal side, but if they maybe hadn't tuned into the episode or kind of, weren't necessarily aware, I suppose kind of like, do you see that maybe it's going to become, people are going to drive this practice a bit more and people are going to be kind of more invested in their privacy and their security? Do you think it's something that's going to be kind of like led by the government? Just a bit of an idea of what your kind of predictions are that's really going to, I suppose, between privacy, security, or any regulations that you anticipate are probably going to start to be taken a bit more seriously or come into play?
Yeah, I think the two big drivers really is one is AI. So that's one that's like a big driver. We can talk about that here in a second. And two is the government and kind of like regulation enforcement. I think that's really going to dictate. I mean, really, the third one is actually just consumer awareness and and care. How much do consumers care about this? I think those are the three big drivers over the next like 5 years. So one on the AI front, uh, you have AI being used more and more against consumers by marketers and sellers. You have, AI, the AI SDR types of companies and AI marketers are just automating the creation and delivery and communication with customers, eroding oftentimes at the like salespeople's job. And so you have AI being kind of used against consumers. You also have AI being used by attackers and hackers and social engineers for attacks. So that's kind of happening. And then you have like, well, what do consumers have? Right now, kind of formally, well, you kind of like do stuff yourself by hand. It's kind of like showing up to a gunfight with a stick. With something like Optery, you have like a machine gun that you can kind of defend yourself and you can automate the defense. But we, I'm kind of maybe jumping the gun a little bit here, but we have, because we haven't publicly announced it yet, but we have our agentic AI agent that is complete and kind of fully ready to go. We just haven't publicly announced it yet. The plan is to announce it in October. So we have a really, really powerful agentic AI agent that you can just tell it what to do as if you were interacting with like ChatGPT or Claude or something, and just say, "Is my profile on this company?" And then it'll go search and check. Please remove me, or remove, do a Google search. Any data brokers that are showing up in the Google's index, opt me out of them, or just opt me out of this, opt me out of that, or opt me out of everything. And you can kind of just like talk to it, and it goes and does its thing. So we use a self-hosted Anthropic model. We use an MCP to kind of like operationalize our existing infrastructure into this goals-based agent, and it's super exciting. So stuff like that. That's I don't know of anything else that's out there like this that we'll be releasing in the next few weeks, publicly announcing it. Really is kind of a game changer, and it kind of like levels the playing field quite a lot, and it really is an opportunity to put consumers more in control, and so where the terms are not dictated so much to consumers, but with say an agentic AI agent, the terms can be dictated more towards these companies. So that's a big factor. It's kind of what's happening. It's AI buying is being used against consumers. You have companies like Optery. I know of nothing else out there like this that are using AI to kind of like as a new technology for consumers. That's one, and then two is government, and it's really varies by country. So I'm in the U.S., so I'm a little bit kind of biased here, but we actually just quietly launched into Canada. So we're live in Canada. We'll do a public announcement on Canada. You can go now. Anybody can go now that's in Canada and purchase an Opera subscription. And then our plan is to go to Australia and the UK next. We actually get a lot of requests for the UK, and we're just it's kind of on our roadmap. It's something that we're working on. Now it's definitely country by country, and then where I live, it's state by state. And as we've seen in the U.S., you've gotten really whipsawed by the different administrations over the last few years, and so we're early on in the current administration, and we'll see what happens in a few years, but at the federal level. But that's a huge factor is what happens in with lawmakers, particularly at the federal level. At this moment in time, it seems like there's no hope whatsoever of getting anything done at the federal level for data privacy, and so it's been happening at the state level. And then is it something that certain states kind of start to ramp up, and maybe certain states like maybe California and Texas that have more resources, do they start to build technology and kind of processes and then actually share them and open source them to smaller states, maybe like a Vermont or Rhode Island or something that just doesn't have the same resources as like a California or Texas. So definitely like state by state level, that's really a huge factor in terms of where this all goes, how much enforcement happens or lack thereof. Laws are getting stricter and stricter. So California initially came out with the CCPA in 2020, and they've steadily made the laws in California stronger and stronger. So I think something just passed like a day or two ago. I haven't had a chance to fully parse the details, but over the last 4 years or so, the laws in California are just getting stronger and stronger, and that's also happening in other states as well. So it's really all about the lawmakers. And so one of the things that we do is we encourage our customers and our user base to appeal to their lawmakers. If they're in a state that doesn't have a privacy law, fight hard and say that you want one. I think it's one of the things I've talked about for a while is there's like you've heard about the digital divide. There's a privacy divide where in the United States, if you live in certain states, you have rights to data privacy. If you live in Texas or and there's others, Colorado, Utah, Virginia. And then if you live in other states, you don't have any rights at all. It's just kind of bizarre that within the United States, some people have data rights and others don't. And so we're always really kind of evangelizing that everybody should be advocating for more data rights with their lawmakers. And that's really key to what our mission is, which is just the DNA of our company. One is product engineering, but it's also mission driven. It's just we do not like the fact that people are being taken advantage of by companies without their permission. And so that's the fight that we've taken up to help. And it so happens to be that cybersecurity is really our key use case. Is we recognize that this data was being used for attacks, and so again we partner with CISOs and IT teams to say, hey, we're looking at all the different ways that we secure our company, and we now need to look outside of our walls and say, hey, we need to reduce the amount of just data flowing about our employees and executives to make us more difficult targets and reduce our likelihoods of being attacked.
Yeah, no. I honestly, I think it's a mission that arguably is absolutely critical and really helps the everyday individual. Again, I think it's so easy to forget that it's not just businesses that this helps. It is kind of it's your family members, it's your friends, kind of that this are the people that it's impacting. And again, I think the educational piece is you don't know what you don't know, especially if you're not exposed to this kind of information all the time. And what you guys are doing, saying is definitely helping kind of the everyday. But Lawrence, honestly, I think we could go on for ages because it's such a big topic, and there's so much to unpack. But this is really been valuable. Thank you so much for shining a light on the risks of personal data exposure. And like I say, I think addressing it has to not only kind of become part of every security strategy, but I think it should become part of everybody's kind of day to day. I think you don't want your data being out there in places where you don't know it's kind of there, and arguably unnecessary as well, because it does leave you vulnerable for security risks. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been a pleasure to have you on. To our listeners, make sure to subscribe, share this episode with any of your peers, get connected with us on LinkedIn, but of course get connected with Lawrence and the team on LinkedIn. Make sure to reach out if you want to see if you can have any use for their services. But that is it for today. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time for more conversations that are shaping cyber.
Thanks, Katie.